That is what you deserve. Those words still echo in my ears, a sound that refuses to fade. My name is Marietta Holden. I am 61 years old, and this is the story I kept locked in silence for months until the silence itself became unbearable. Welcome to Voices of Mama Jo. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. My life was never meant to unravel in the fluorescent-lit kitchen of my own son's home. Not like that, not in the way people talk about in whispers at church or over the phone when they lower their voices to keep the gossip from spilling out too loudly. But sometimes, life doesn't ask for permission before it humiliates you in ways you didn't think were possible. That afternoon, the broth was simmering on the stove, and the smell of ginger and peppers drifted through the air like any normal day. Except nothing about that day would remain normal. My son Ethan had called me earlier in the morning asking if I could stop by and help them because his wife's mother, Patricia, was visiting and things were a little tense. That was the phrase he used, as if tension were something delicate, something fragile enough to tiptoe around. I should have known better. Ethan married into a family that treated drama the same way farmers treated harvest time. Inevitable, expected, maybe even a little sacred. But I loved my boy. And when your child asks for help, you don't calculate the risk. You just go. I walked the 5 blocks from my house to theirs because the cold was crisp in a way that made my joints feel alive instead of stiff. Ethan had always wanted to live near me, and when he and his wife bought the townhouse 2 years ago, I pretended not to cry, even though I did later that night, quietly, alone in my room, grateful he hadn't drifted too far the way grown children sometimes do. When I arrived, the door was open, which was strange because Ethan was meticulous about locking things. It was his wife, Alani, who was careless, leaving things undone the way young people sometimes do when they've never lived alone long enough to understand that unlocked doors can lead to all kinds of things. I stepped inside and heard voices, not loud enough to call yelling, not quiet enough to call conversation. I followed the sound into the kitchen where Patricia stood, stirring the pot of soup with a wooden spoon as though she had always belonged there, as if that kitchen were her rightful territory and my presence an intrusion. Patricia was a woman who carried her judgments the way some people carried expensive handbags, always visible, always polished, always heavy with something inside. She wasn't from our culture, didn't share our values, didn't understand our gentleness or our strength. She had once told Ethan, right in front of me, that some families have too much emotional history. It makes them clingy, and I had smiled politely, even though the comment stung like a slap. Alani was sitting at the table, eyes red. Ethan stood beside her, trying to soothe her, rubbing small circles on her back the way he used to do for me when he was little, and I had my long coughing spells. I thought someone must be sick. I thought maybe Patricia had overstepped with her words, the way she often did, and feelings had gotten bruised. I had no idea that the soup was already boiling, not just on the stove, but inside Patricia herself, ready to spill. When she turned and saw me, her expression didn't shift into politeness or even acknowledgement. She looked at me the way someone looks at a bug that wandered into their home, annoyed, inconvenienced, maybe even disgusted. "You didn't have to come," she said flatly, as though my presence were a burden. "Ethan already handled it." Ethan stepped forward quickly, his voice rushed and mild. "No, Mom, I called you because, well, I thought you could help smooth things out. It's been a rough morning," Patricia snorted. "Rough because someone can't handle basic criticism." Alani's head dropped at that. My heart tightened. I moved closer, trying to keep my voice warm, steady, harmless. "Why don't you tell me what happened?" I asked. Patricia turned back to the stove, gripping the wooden spoon with the kind of force that makes a person's knuckles go white. I told Alani that if she's going to make traditional soup, she should at least follow the recipe correctly. I didn't raise my daughter to accept mediocrity. "It wasn't mediocrity," Alani whispered. "It just wasn't your enough." Patricia slammed the spoon down on the counter. The kitchen rattled with the impact. When I say something, I expect it to be respected. I saw Ethan flinch. My son was not a timid man. He worked construction in the heat of summer and the dead chill of winter. He was strong, steady, not easily intimidated, but Patricia had a way of shrinking people, of making grown adults feel like misbehaving children. I stepped between them gently, palms raised like I was approaching a wounded animal. "Patricia," I said softly, "I'm sure everybody's a little on edge. Let's take a breath. We can talk this through." That was when it happened. It happened fast. So fast that I didn't have time to register the motion before the pain came. Patricia grabbed the pot, the entire pot, and flung it forward toward me in one violent, fluid motion. The lid clattered to the floor as boiling hot soup arced through the air like a wave on fire. The liquid hit my face, my neck, my chest. The shock of it stole my breath, the heat swallowing my skin. Burning, searing, devouring. I screamed. I didn't know I was capable of that sound. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing me, pulling me back, shouting for water, for towels, for something. Anything. Alani's voice cracked into sobs, screaming, "Mom, what is wrong with you?" Patricia stood there with the empty pot in her hand, her expression twisted with something I still don't have a name for. Not anger, not madness. Something darker, something old, something cold. "That," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass, "is what you deserve." Those words didn't shout. They slithered. They slid into the steam rising from my scalded skin. They clung to me longer than the pain itself. Ethan dragged me to the sink, water pouring over my face as the world blurred. I couldn't tell if what streamed down my cheeks was water or tears or melted layers of my own fear. I heard Patricia's footsteps retreating, her voice snapping, "I won't be disrespected in my own daughter's home." Alani yelled after her, "It's not your home, it's ours." But Patricia didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't speak. She stormed into the hallway, into the living room, toward the door. Ethan shouted, "Patricia, you assaulted my mother. Don't you walk out of this house like nothing happened." But she did. She walked out, calm, composed, as if she hadn't just hurled a pot of boiling soup into another human being's face, as if she hadn't carved those words into my memory with the precision of a knife, as if nothing she did had weight or consequence. Ethan helped me sit down, his hands shaking, his breath trembling against my shoulder. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so—" "Baby," I whispered, "call 911. And then I said the words that would change everything, the words that rose from a place inside me I didn't know was still alive. "And after you do that, call him." Ethan froze. Alani froze, because they knew exactly who him was, and why that call would shift the ground beneath all of us. When Ethan froze, I could see all the memories rushing through him, memories he had tried for years to bury, memories I had never wanted to unearth again, memories tied to the only man who could make Patricia regret what she had done. The kitchen felt smaller, shrinking around us as the cold water ran over my burned cheek. Alani stood still, one hand over her mouth, eyes darting between me and Ethan, as though she were piecing together a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. Ethan swallowed. "Mom, are you sure?" His voice cracked on the last word. I nodded slowly, pain pulsing through my skin with every tiny movement. "Yes," I whispered. "Call him." The silence that followed wasn't just silence. It was history settling back into the room like a long-forgotten ghost deciding to take a seat at the table. Ethan finally grabbed his phone, hesitating only a moment before stepping into the hallway to make the call. I heard nothing of the conversation. Only his shaky breathing, only the trembling echo of steps pacing back and forth as he talked to the man who should have been a stranger by now. Meanwhile, Alani stood beside me, her hands fluttering helplessly, wanting to touch me, wanting to do something, anything, but terrified of hurting me further. "Marietta, I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "My mom, she's never done anything like that. I didn't know she—" "Sweetheart," I said gently, though my voice was thin from the burn and shock, "I know you didn't know, and this isn't on you." She sobbed harder. "It is on me. I should have stopped her from cooking. She was already angry before you arrived. She blamed me for—" She cut herself off, pressing her lips together. "For what?" I asked softly. She hesitated. "For choosing Ethan. For choosing this life. For choosing independence. She thinks I—" She trembled. "She thinks I threw away the future she planned for me." That told me more than anything else she could have said. Patricia was a woman who believed in control the way some people believed in religion, deeply, absolutely, unforgivingly. And Alani breaking away from that control must have felt like a betrayal she couldn't forgive. Ethan returned then, his face pale, eyes wide. "He's coming," he said. My heart skipped, not from fear, not from excitement, but from the weight of everything that name carried. "How long?" I asked quietly. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I hadn't seen Alexander Cruz, Ethan's father, in 27 years. 27 years since I packed a single suitcase, grabbed my infant son, and walked out of a life that had nearly swallowed me whole. I thought I'd never see him again. I promised myself I wouldn't. But life has a strange way of circling back to the places you thought you'd burned to ash. And sometimes, the only person who can fight a monster is the one who used to be one himself. As we waited, the pain in my face grew sharper, angrier. I could feel the skin swelling, tightening, burning with a relentless heat that made the world blur. Ethan held my hand, squeezing it gently, trying his best not to break. "Mom, she's going to pay for this, I swear it. She can't just—" I squeezed his hand back. "Baby, don't lose yourself in this, not because of her." He closed his eyes. "I won't, but I won't let her get away with hurting you." I nodded. "I know." Alani sat on the floor beside my chair, her head resting lightly on my knee as though asking for forgiveness without using words. I brushed her hair with my uninjured hand. "This was not your fault," I murmured. "Patricia made her choices. Now she'll face her consequences." We heard sirens then, soft at first, then louder, until the blue and red lights danced across the living room wall. Ethan stood immediately. "They're here." 2 EMTs rushed in, examining my burns with careful hands. "We need to take her to the hospital," one said. Ethan nodded, though his jaw clenched with fury. "I'll drive behind the ambulance," he said. "Alani, stay here, and pack a bag for Mom. She'll need clothes for a day or two." Alani nodded, wiping her tears. "Of course." As they prepared to move me, another sound cut through the room, a car door slamming shut. Ethan's head whipped toward the window. He froze. "He's here," he murmured. And then I saw him. Alexander stood at the doorway, tall as ever, broad-shouldered, silver streaks running through his once dark hair. Time had aged him, softened the hardness in his face, but his eyes, those deep storm-colored eyes, hadn't changed. They still carried the same weight, the same fire, the same authority that had once drawn me in and later driven me away. When he stepped inside, the EMTs paused. Ethan stood between us instinctively, protective even now. Alexander looked at me, really looked, and something inside him cracked open, something raw, something fierce. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice quiet but heavy with a danger I recognized instantly. "Her name is Patricia," Ethan replied, "Alani's mother." Alexander nodded once, a single, controlled gesture, but his eyes darkened with a storm I had seen only a handful of times in my life, and each time someone paid dearly for awakening it. He approached me slowly, respectfully, as though unsure if he was welcome. "Marietta," he said softly. "May I?" He gestured toward my injured face, asking permission to step closer. I nodded. He knelt beside me and looked at my burns with eyes that didn't hide the rage curling beneath them. "They'll treat you at the hospital," he said, voice low, "but I need you to answer me one thing before you go." He lifted his gaze to mine, steady, unwavering. "Do you want me involved?" The question wasn't simple. It wasn't small. It wasn't innocent. Involving Alexander meant doors would open, and others would slam shut. It meant consequences would come swiftly, brutally, thoroughly. It meant Patricia would soon understand the weight of what she had done, not because of the law, not because of public opinion, but because of Alexander's name alone. His reach was still long, his influence still sharp, his resources still unmatched, and even after all these years, he would burn the world down for Ethan, or for me. I held his gaze. "Yes," I whispered. His eyes softened for a moment, just a moment, before hardening again. "Then she's finished." The EMTs began to wheel me out, the room blurring around me, but as we moved past him, Alexander placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You're safe now," he murmured. "I'll handle everything." Outside, the cold air hit my skin sharply, stinging the burns, making me wince. Ethan climbed into his car. The EMTs closed the ambulance doors, and just before they shut completely, I saw Alexander pull out his phone, his expression shifting into something lethal, something final, something Patricia had no idea she had awakened. Whatever he said on that call would not just change everything. It would end everything for her. The ambulance rocked gently as it pulled away from the curb, the sirens muted now. Only the soft hum of the engine vibrating through the stretcher beneath me. The pain from the burns was sharp, pulsing, almost rhythmic, like a second heartbeat beneath my skin, but the ache in my chest came from something deeper. Seeing Alexander again had cracked open a door I thought I had sealed years ago. The EMT on my left, a young man with kind eyes and a steady voice, adjusted the cool compress on my cheek and told me I was doing great. I nodded, though my mind was far from the sterile white interior of the ambulance. It was still in that kitchen, still hearing Patricia's voice slithering from the doorway. "That is what you deserve." The words played again and again, a loop that refused to fade even as the distance grew between me and the house where everything fell apart. The EMT asked me to rate my pain 1 to 10. I told him 7. He looked at me like he didn't believe it. Maybe he was right not to, but pain, real pain, is something you learn to measure differently when you've survived a man like Alexander once was. As we neared the hospital, I closed my eyes and thought of Ethan, my sweet boy who grew into a good man despite everything he had witnessed as a child. I wondered what he felt now, torn between the mother he cherished and the father he had feared and admired in equal measure. The ambulance slowed, the back doors swung open, and cold air rushed in. They wheeled me into the ER, where bright lights stabbed through my half-closed eyelids. Nurses moved around me quickly, efficient, focused, gentle. They asked questions. I answered what I could. The doctor examined my burns, murmuring things to the nurses that sounded clinical but kind. They applied cooling gel, wrapped the worst areas, and assured me the burns, though painful, were mostly first degree with 2 small patches of second degree. I tried to breathe, to let the relief settle in. They said I'd need ointment, pain medication, and monitoring, but I wouldn't be hospitalized long. They were still working on me when Ethan rushed in, face flushed from running, hair disheveled like he had dragged his hands through it the whole drive. "Mom," he gasped, moving to my side. "How are you? Are you in pain? What did they say?" He fired questions like bullets. I placed my good hand on his arm. "Baby, I'm all right. They said it looks worse than it is." His shoulders sagged with relief. Then he swallowed, glancing toward the door. "He's outside." My breath hitched. "Alexander?" "Yeah, they wouldn't let him back yet." I nodded. "That's good. I need a moment." Ethan sat beside me, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. "Mom, I didn't know if calling him was the right thing." "It was," I said softly, "but I know it wasn't easy." He looked at me, and for a moment he was 5 years old again, clinging to my leg during those nights when the house echoed with shouting. "Do you trust him?" he whispered. It was a loaded question, a dangerous one. I thought carefully before answering. "I trust what he will do for you." Ethan nodded slowly. "That's what I thought too." A knock sounded at the door, and a nurse stuck her head in. "Ma'am, there's someone asking to see you. We weren't sure if—" Alexander stepped into the doorway before she finished, his presence filling the small room instantly. He wasn't dressed like the man I remembered, the man with starched collars, expensive watches, and a voice that could cut through any crowd. Today he wore a simple dark jacket, jeans, no rings, no shine, nothing flashy. But the authority, the quiet, unmistakable power was still there, sitting beneath his skin like a dormant fire. "May I come in?" he asked, his tone respectful, controlled. Ethan looked at me. I nodded. Alexander stepped inside. The nurse closed the door, and suddenly the room felt smaller than before. Too small for the weight of everything unspoken between us. He approached slowly, stopping at the side of the bed, his eyes scanning the bandages on my cheek. Then, in a voice that cracked in a way I had never heard from him, not in all the years we were together, he whispered, "Marietta, who gave her the right to touch you like this?" Emotion swelled in my throat. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He already knew. He stood there for a long moment, looking at me as though he were memorizing every detail of my injuries, every place the burns ended and the untouched skin began. Then he turned to Ethan. "I made the first few calls," he said. "Things are already in motion." Ethan nodded, jaw tight. "Good." I stared at them both. "What exactly does that mean?" Alexander pulled a chair closer, sitting beside me in a slow, measured motion. "It means Patricia will regret what she did before the sun rises tomorrow." I stiffened. "Alexander." "Not like that," he said firmly, reading the fear in my eyes. "I'm not the man I used to be. I don't solve problems with fists or fear anymore. I learned the cost of that. I lived the cost of it, but I still have influence. I still have connections, and I still protect what's mine." Ethan shifted. "Mom," he said gently, "we're not letting her walk away from this." I nodded. "I don't want her to walk away, but I don't want violence. Not for Patricia. Not for us." Alexander's jaw tightened. "There won't be violence, but there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" He leaned back slightly, his tone calm but unyielding. "Legal, financial, social. She will lose every avenue she has ever used to control people. She will feel the weight of accountability in ways she has never imagined." Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Dad has a friend, well, more than a friend, who works in the state attorney's office, and another who oversees compliance violations for assisted care facilities," Alexander added. "Patricia works at one." I blinked. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying," Alexander interrupted gently, "that she has a long history of behavior that goes unnoticed because she hides it well. But people like her always leave trails, and her trail is already being uncovered." Ethan nodded. "Mom, she could have killed you. She should not be working around vulnerable people." And hearing it from him, from my son, my gentle boy, made something inside me settle. Not vengeance, not anger, just the certainty that Patricia had crossed a line too dangerous to ignore. I closed my eyes, letting the information sink in as another wave of pain pulsed across my cheek. "I don't want to destroy her life," I whispered. Alexander's voice lowered. "We won't destroy it. We'll reveal it." That distinction, the difference between destruction and exposure, felt important somehow. Fair. Just. The doctor returned then, checking on me, adjusting bandages, confirming the plan to discharge me within the hour. Ethan stepped out to call Alani and update her. Alexander remained silent at my side, and then, when the room was quiet again, he spoke. "You didn't deserve this." I looked at him, at the man I once loved and once feared, at the man I left so Ethan could grow up without learning all the wrong things about strength. And I said softly, "I know." "I couldn't protect you before," he said, "but I will now." I studied him for a moment. "You've changed." "Yes," he replied, "but not in the ways that matter." And though he didn't explain what that meant, I understood. He wasn't a violent man anymore, but he was still a powerful one, still someone who could tilt the balance of a situation simply by stepping into it. Maybe that was what we needed. Maybe that was why fate, or whatever it was, had brought him back today. I drew a breath. "Alexander?" "Yes?" "What exactly did you set in motion?" He hesitated only briefly. "The kind of truth Patricia cannot escape." The hospital discharged me just after sunset, though the sky outside still held a faint bruised purple, the kind that settles after a long storm but before the air remembers how to breathe again. Ethan walked on my left side, careful and protective, matching his pace to mine. Alexander walked on my right, a silent wall of controlled energy. Not anger. No, anger would have cracked through the surface. This was something far colder. Purpose, calculation, a storm with direction. They helped me into Ethan's car, and before I could settle in, Alexander leaned slightly, his voice low. "You'll stay at my place tonight." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Ethan cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Dad has a security system, cameras, a gate. Patricia doesn't know where he lives now. It's safer." I wanted to protest, but the truth hovered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Patricia was unpredictable. And an unpredictable person who felt entitled to control could be dangerous when embarrassed, cornered, or exposed. I sighed. "Fine, but only for tonight." Alexander didn't react, didn't smirk, didn't soften. Not like the man I once knew would have. He simply nodded. "Tonight is enough." Ethan drove. Alexander followed behind in his own car, and for a moment I felt the bizarre, surreal contrast of it all. The father of my child driving behind us like a shadow from the past, and my son beside me trying to hold himself together after nearly losing control in that kitchen earlier. I reached over, resting my good hand on his arm. "I'm okay, Ethan." He swallowed. "No, Mom, you're not. I saw your face when she threw that soup. You looked so shocked, like you never thought she'd actually touch you." "I didn't think she would," I said softly. "I thought she would shout, embarrass me, make her usual jabs, but this—" My voice trailed off. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tighter. "She went too far." "Yes," I whispered. "She did." We drove in silence until the city lights shifted, growing brighter, sharper. Ethan turned down a quiet residential street lined with tall trees and homes that looked like they valued privacy over style. When he stopped in front of a sleek metal gate, it opened automatically. Alexander's car pulled in behind us. The driveway curved up toward a modern two-story home with large windows tinted just enough to hide the inside, but not enough to feel cold or unwelcoming. When we stepped out, I breathed in the scent of cedar, clean, grounding, familiar somehow. Alexander approached us. "Let's get you inside." Ethan led me through the front door, and I paused just past the threshold. The house was warm, not extravagant like the places Alexander once owned in our past life together, but intentional. Earth tones, soft lighting, shelves lined with books instead of trophies, art that felt meaningful instead of expensive for the sake of being expensive, and on one wall near a small console table, a framed photograph of Ethan as a child. My breath caught. It was one I took when Ethan was 5. He was laughing, covered in paint from a project we'd done together. I hadn't known Alexander kept it. I hadn't known he even had a copy. Ethan let out a slow exhale behind me. "Dad, you didn't tell me you kept that." Alexander removed his jacket, hanging it neatly. "I don't throw away important things." That statement lingered in the air, heavier than anything else said that evening. He gestured toward a room. "Marietta, come sit." I settled carefully onto the sofa, the cushions cool against my back. Ethan sat on the armrest beside me. Alexander remained standing for a moment, watching me, as if assessing whether I was strong enough to hear what came next. "All right," I said finally, squaring my shoulders. "Tell me exactly what you put in motion." Alexander nodded once, then sat across from us, his posture sharp but calm. "First, I filed a formal report about the assault. It's documented, time-stamped, and backed by hospital photos." Ethan nodded. "Good." "Second," Alexander continued, "I contacted a friend at the state attorney's office. He's forwarding the report directly to the domestic crimes unit. They will fast-track it. Patricia won't be able to sweep this under the rug." My stomach twisted. "I don't want to ruin her life. I just want accountability." Alexander held my gaze. "This is accountability." "What else?" I asked quietly, because I could feel there was more. He didn't evade. "I also made a call to her workplace, not anonymously. Her supervisor knows what happened and is initiating an internal review." "Alexander," I whispered, "she could lose her job." "Marietta," he said evenly, "she works with elderly people, vulnerable people. If she's capable of throwing boiling soup on you, she is capable of harming someone weaker." I opened my mouth, then closed it, because he wasn't wrong, and that truth was heavier than my discomfort about watching another woman's life unravel. Ethan leaned forward. "Dad's not trying to punish her, Mom. He's trying to make sure she can't do something like this to anyone else." "There's more," Alexander added quietly. "But those are the main actions for now." I swallowed. "Tell me the rest." He met my eyes, unflinching. I reached out to Alani. My chest tightened. "Why?" "To ensure she's safe." Ethan stiffened. "Did she answer?" Alexander nodded. "Yes, she said she's staying with a friend tonight because Patricia is not stable right now. Not stable." The words rippled through me like cold water. "Did she say anything else?" "She said she's sorry. She said she blames herself." Ethan let out a shaky exhale. "Poor Alani." Alexander clasped his hands, elbows resting on his knees. "She also said something important." "What?" I asked. "She said Patricia has been unraveling for months. Mood swings, outbursts, increasing resentment toward anyone she feels is challenging her control. She's been hiding it well, but not well enough." I sat back slowly. Pieces were falling into place, pieces I hadn't realized were connected. "Do you think she planned to hurt me?" Alexander shook his head. "No." This wasn't premeditated, but it was impulsive, dangerous, and it could escalate if she's not held accountable. A strange mixture of sadness and dread settled over me. Patricia wasn't just a cruel woman. She was a woman losing her grip on herself. Ethan touched my hand. "Mom, you didn't deserve this, but you also didn't cause it." Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them away. "I know, it's just a lot." Alexander leaned back. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll take the next steps." "What next steps?" I asked. "We meet with the investigator. We provide your statement, and we ensure Patricia cannot manipulate the situation." I hesitated. "Will she go to jail?" Alexander answered carefully. "That depends on many things. But at minimum, she will face consequences she cannot ignore. I closed my eyes, letting out a long breath. When I opened them, I found both my son and the man I once loved watching me with the same expression: protectiveness, fierce and unwavering. "Thank you," I whispered. "Both of you." Ethan smiled sadly. Alexander didn't smile at all, but something in his eyes softened. After a few minutes, Ethan stood. "Mom, I'm staying here too, if that's okay." "Of course," Alexander said instantly. "I'll set up the guest room." "I'll help," Ethan responded, heading upstairs. That left me alone with Alexander for the first time in 27 years. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was thick, heavy, filled with ghosts and unspoken what-ifs. He looked at me, expression unreadable. "Marietta, is it all right if I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me when Patricia started acting this way?" I drew a slow breath. "Because it felt like something I should handle on my own. I didn't want you to think I needed you." "Do you?" he asked quietly. I met his eyes. "Tonight, yes." He exhaled slowly as though that answer meant more to him than I intended. He rose, walked to the far corner of the room and dimmed the lights. "You should rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." As he walked past me, he paused, just for a moment, long enough for me to feel the gravity of everything shifting between us, long enough for me to know this night was only the beginning of consequences, of truth, of a storm neither Patricia nor I was ready for. "Good night, Marietta," he said softly. "You're safe here." And for the first time since the hot soup touched my skin, I actually believed it. Sleep did not come easily. Not with the dull throb in my cheek and the weight of the day pressing down on my chest like a heavy book left open on an old wound. Alexander's guest room was warm and comfortable, with soft beige walls and a large window overlooking the quiet backyard, where motion-detected lights cast gentle circles onto trimmed grass. But comfort could only reach so far. The real ache lived deeper, somewhere between fear and disbelief, between exhaustion and the strange, unsettling sense of safety I hadn't felt in years. Not this kind, not the kind that came from the presence of a man who used to be both my sanctuary and my storm. I lay on my back, staring up at the ceiling. The house was quiet, too quiet for how much stirred inside it. I could sense Alexander awake somewhere, probably pacing, calculating. Ethan, too. No doubt lying in the guest room down the hall with fists still clenched in his sleep. Around midnight, the last bit of adrenaline drained from me, leaving my body heavy and my thoughts hazy. I drifted in and out of light sleep until a soft knock tapped at my door. I sat up slowly, careful not to tug the bandage on my cheek. "Yes?" The door cracked open. Ethan's silhouette appeared first, then Alexander behind him, his broad frame partially blocking the hall light. "Mom," Ethan whispered, "sorry to wake you. There's something you need to know." My heart quickened. "What happened?" Alexander stepped forward, voice low and controlled. "Patricia showed up at your apartment." The room tilted for a moment. "What?" "It's okay," Ethan added quickly. "You're not there. Cassidy, your neighbor, saw her banging on your door and yelling your name. She recorded everything and texted me." My pulse hammered painfully against my ribs. "Is she still there?" "No," Alexander said. "She left after about 10 minutes. Cassidy said she drove off fast, like someone trying to outrun a mistake." I pressed a hand to my forehead. "My God." Ethan walked over and sat beside me on the edge of the bed. "Mom, are you all right?" "Yes," I whispered, though my voice shook. "I just didn't think she'd go that far." Alexander's tone hardened slightly. "This is what happens when someone feels their control slipping. They lash out. Patricia is unraveling, and tonight confirms that she is unpredictable and unstable." I exhaled shakily. "What did Cassidy say exactly?" Ethan pulled out his phone. "I'll play the recording." Before I could protest, he hit play away. Patricia's voice erupted from the speaker, shrill, slurred, frantic. "Marietta, I know you can hear me. Open this door. Open it. You think you can just walk around acting like you're better than me? You think you can embarrass me in front of my daughter? In front of everyone? Come out here. Face me." My stomach twisted painfully. Alexander's jaw flexed with quiet fury. The recording continued, Patricia's words dissolving into insults, accusations, threats, not violent but desperate. "Turn it off," I whispered. Ethan did. The silence afterward felt louder than her voice had. Tears stung my eyes. She's losing it. She's really losing it. Alexander crouched in front of me, his eyes level with mine, steady and grounded. Marietta, listen to me. What Patricia is doing isn't your fault. It's not your responsibility to fix her or protect her from the consequences of her behavior. I nodded, though guilt still flickered inside me like a persistent spark. What do we do now? Ethan asked. Alexander rose to his full height. We document everything. Cassidy will forward the video to me. It strengthens the case. I did not miss the shift in his tone, calm but charged, like a man slipping back into an old language he'd tried not to use for years. And tomorrow, he continued, we meet with the investigator and file for a temporary protective order. I stiffened. A protective order? Yes, Alexander said. After tonight, it's not optional. But, Marietta, he cut in gently but firmly, she showed up at your home past midnight, shouting and pounding on your door. That's escalation. Ethan nodded. Dad's right, Mom. She could have been waiting for you if you hadn't come here tonight. That thought sent a cold wave rolling through my body. Alexander stepped closer. You are not going back there alone, not until the situation is contained. I swallowed hard. Okay, I understand. Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding. Good. The room fell quiet for a moment. Then I looked between them, my son, strong and protective, and the man who had once been both my fear and my protector. You both need rest, I said softly. We'll handle everything tomorrow. Ethan hugged me gently, careful not to brush my injured cheek. Good night, Mom. Wake me if you need anything. I will, I lied, because mothers rarely wake their children for anything, even when they should. He slipped out into the hallway. Alexander lingered a moment longer. I'll be awake for a while, he said. If you need anything, even just water, call out. I nodded. Thank you. He hesitated. May I ask one more thing? Of course. Did she ever treat you this way before, even subtly? I thought back, through dinners, gatherings, awkward attempts at bonding that never really bonded. She was sharp, I admitted. Dismissive, critical, but never violent. Alexander's eyes narrowed slightly. Then this wasn't about you. Then who was it about? Control, he said simply. People like Patricia react violently when they feel threatened, and you threatened her power over Alani. By existing? By being loved, he corrected. The words hit deeper than I expected. I looked down at my hands, now trembling slightly, and clasped them together. Good night, Alexander. His expression softened just enough to reveal a flicker of the man I once knew. Good night, Marietta. You're safe. When he left and closed the door behind him, I finally let my shoulders sag. I lay back down, but true rest remained out of reach. My mind churned with questions, worries, and a nagging sense that something larger had been set in motion. Something none of us could stop now. Around 2 a.m, exhaustion finally won, dragging me into a restless sleep. When I woke again, sunlight was spilling through the curtains, warm and golden. For a moment, I forgot everything. Then the ache in my cheek reminded me. I sat up carefully, touching the edges of the bandage. Footsteps approached down the hall. A soft knock. Mom, Ethan's voice, come in. He entered with a gentle smile that didn't fully reach his eyes. How are you feeling? Sore, I admitted, but better. Good, Dad made breakfast. I blinked. Alexander cooked? Ethan shrugged. He tried. It's edible. That sounds about right, I murmured, managing a small smile. As Ethan helped me up, my mind shifted to what the day ahead held. Statements, reports, protective orders, consequences. Patricia's life, unraveling thread by thread, and beneath it all, the strange, undeniable fact that Alexander had stepped back into my world like a force of nature, quiet but unstoppable, just when everything fell apart. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was timing. Or maybe some doors, no matter how tightly you close them, find their way open again when you need them most. Either way, everything was changing, and Patricia had no idea what was coming. Morning in Alexander's house felt strangely gentle, like the walls themselves were trying to give me space to breathe. The sunlight filtered through tall windows in soft gold ribbons, warming the hardwood floors and chasing away the shadows of the night before. Yet even with the warm light, even with the smell of coffee drifting up the staircase, my body felt tense, braced, ready for something I couldn't quite name. Ethan walked beside me down the stairs, his hand hovering close to my back but not touching, as if he wasn't sure how fragile I was. Or maybe he was trying to figure out how fragile he felt. I squeezed his arm gently. "I'm all right, baby." "I know," he murmured, but he didn't look like he believed it. Alexander was in the kitchen, standing over a skillet, like it was a negotiation he wasn't entirely sure he'd win. He turned the moment he heard us, his eyes trailing over my face first, not in a pitying way, but with the steady, assessing calm of a man trying to make sure nothing had worsened overnight. "Good morning," he said. "I made eggs and toast and something that was supposed to be pancakes." Ethan whispered dramatically, "Mom, don't touch the pancakes." Alexander shot him a look, and I couldn't help the small laugh that escaped me. It felt good, strange but good. The first moment since yesterday, that didn't hurt. I sat carefully at the table. Ethan poured me a glass of water. Alexander placed a plate in front of me that looked safe. Eggs, toast, and a small bowl of fruit that had definitely come from a pre-cut grocery container. Exactly his style. "Eat," he said gently. "You'll need strength today." "Right," I murmured. Today, the investigator, the protective order. Patricia's unraveling. The consequences Alexander promised would come. I ate slowly, the eggs soft, the toast warm, the fruit cool against the inside of my mouth. "How did you sleep?" Alexander asked. "On and off," I admitted. "Understandable." Ethan buttered a piece of toast aggressively. "I kept dreaming she showed up here." "She won't," Alexander replied. His tone left no room for doubt. "She doesn't know where I live, and even if she tried following you or Alani, she wouldn't make it past the gate." Ethan nodded but remained tense. After breakfast, I excused myself to the bathroom to wash up. The sight in the mirror made my stomach twist. My cheek was swollen and red beneath the bandage, the edges of the burn angry and pink. The doctor said it would likely scar slightly. A reminder, a lesson. A mark of a moment I would never be able to forget. I steadied myself with a breath and stepped back into the hallway, where I found Alexander waiting. Not close, not hovering, but present, like a silent shadow. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded. "As I'll ever be." Ethan met us by the front door, holding my purse and a folder, my medical discharge paperwork, the hospital photos, and the report from last night's incident. He handed it to me. "This is everything they'll need." My heart swelled at the care in his preparation. "Thank you." "We'll take my car," Alexander said. "It's safer." I didn't argue. The ride to the municipal building was quiet but not uncomfortable. Ethan played soft music from his phone to fill the silence. I stared out the window, watching the world pass by, normal and unaware of the chaos unfolding in one family's corner of it. When we arrived, the investigator, a woman named Detective Sandra Khoury, met us in a small, private office. She was in her early 40s with sharp eyes softened by genuine empathy. "Mrs. Clark?" she greeted, using my last name. "Please sit. I've been briefed on the basics, but I'd like to hear everything from you directly." I inhaled deeply. Then I told her the entire story. From Patricia's agitation earlier in the day, to the boiling soup, to the words she hissed as the liquid scorched my skin, to the hospital, to the midnight pounding on my door. I avoided dramatics. I avoided exaggeration. I spoke plainly, letting the truth do the work for me. Detective Khoury scribbled notes rapidly, occasionally asking for clarification. Ethan added details about Patricia's past behavior. Alexander filled in what Alani had shared about her mother's recent instability. When I finished, Detective Khoury sat back slowly. "Mrs. Clark, this is serious. Very serious. I'm recommending charges for assault with a scalding agent, and if the judge agrees, the protective order will be granted immediately." My chest tightened. "Will she be arrested?" "Most likely, yes." Ethan exhaled with relief. Alexander remained impassive, unreadable. "But," the detective continued, "I need to ask something difficult." My hands clenched. "All right. Do you believe Patricia intended to physically harm you, or was it an impulsive act fueled by rage?" The question didn't surprise me. I had asked myself the same thing. "I don't believe she woke up planning to hurt me," I said slowly. "But when she threw that soup, she knew it was boiling. She knew it would hurt, and she wanted it to." Detective Khoury nodded. "Thank you. That helps us immensely." She gathered her notes. "We'll process everything today. You should hear from us by this afternoon." We thanked her, and she escorted us out. In the hallway, Ethan squeezed my shoulder. "You did great, Mom. I just told the truth." Alexander stepped closer. "And that's enough." As we walked toward the exit, my phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out. Unknown number. My stomach dropped. Ethan noticed my face and froze. "Who is it?" I answered with a shaking breath. "Hello?" There was silence for a second, just long enough to chill the air around me. Then a broken, trembling voice whispered, "Marietta? Patricia." I stiffened, nearly dropping the phone. Ethan's eyes widened. Alexander stepped in front of me instinctively. "Marietta?" Patricia repeated, her voice thick with tears or wine or both. I couldn't tell. "Please, please don't do this." My throat tightened. "Patricia, I didn't mean it," she cried. "I swear I didn't mean it. It was an accident. You know it was an accident." I swallowed hard. "You threw boiling soup at me." "I was angry," she wailed. "You embarrassed me. You took Alani away from me. You stole my daughter's loyalty. You made her choose." Her voice cracked into a wet sob. "Please, Marietta, please don't press charges. I'll lose everything, my job, my reputation, my home, please." Ethan grabbed my arm. "Mom, hang up." Alexander's jaw flexed. "Put her on speaker." I didn't. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, frozen in place, listening to the unraveling of a woman who'd crossed a line she could never uncross. "Please," she whispered again, desperate. "You don't know what it's like. You don't know the pressure I'm under. You don't know—" "Patricia," I said finally, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. "I didn't do this. You did this. Please, I'm not stopping anything." Silence. Not the silence of someone listening, the silence of someone breaking. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at it, numb. Ethan stepped forward. "Mom, don't feel bad." "I don't," I whispered. I didn't expect her to call." Alexander placed a steadying hand on my back. "That call wasn't for forgiveness, it was for control." I looked up. "You really think so?" "I know so." We stepped out into the sunlight, the air suddenly feeling too bright, too sharp. But something inside me had shifted. Not fear, not guilt, just a deep, anchored certainty. What was happening now needed to happen. For me, for Ethan, for Alani, and maybe, in a twisted way, even for Patricia. "What happens next?" I asked. Alexander's voice was calm, steady, unshakable. "Next," he said, "we wait for the call that changes everything." And deep down, I knew he was right. The call came sooner than any of us expected. Not an hour after we returned to Alexander's house, not long after I'd settled on the edge of the guest bed trying to steady my breath, my phone lit up with a number I now recognized, the investigator's office. Ethan and Alexander were in the hallway speaking in low voices, but the moment they heard the ringtone, both of them stopped, turning toward me like the world had frozen between us. I answered with a soft, "Hello?" "Mrs. Clark," Detective Khoury said, her voice composed, but carrying a weight that made my pulse thud harder. "I wanted to notify you immediately. We located Patricia Matthews at her residence. She's been taken into custody. She will remain there pending her bail hearing." My fingers tightened around the phone. A strange mix of relief and heaviness washed over me, like a door had closed behind me, firm and final. "Thank you," I whispered. "There's more," the detective continued. I straightened, bracing myself. When officers arrived, Patricia was distraught, reportedly intoxicated. She had her belongings packed. She seemed to be preparing to leave town. Ethan's mouth fell open. Alexander's eyes sharpened. "Leave," I echoed. "It appears so." "She also left a handwritten note on her kitchen counter, addressed to you." My breath caught in my throat, a sharp sting. "To me?" "Yes. It's been secured as evidence for now, but once permissible, we can release a copy to you. I wanted you to be aware." My body felt heavy, grounded to the earth, yet my mind floated far away, trying to imagine what she wrote. An apology? A threat? A plea from a woman who had always lived between control and collapse? "Mrs. Clark," the detective continued gently, "I know this is a complicated situation emotionally, but I assure you, you did the right thing. The law is clear here and the evidence is strong. The judge has also approved an immediate temporary protective order." My eyes closed. Relief melted down my spine like warm water. "Thank you," I breathed. "Truly." After we hung up, I sat there for a moment, staring blankly ahead, letting the news settle into the bruised, tender spaces inside me. Ethan stepped into the room first, crouching beside me. "Mom, are you okay?" "She's been arrested," I said quietly, "and she was trying to run." He inhaled sharply. Coward. Alexander entered next, leaning against the doorframe. It was only a matter of time, he said calmly. Actions have consequences, even for women like Patricia. Women like Patricia. Women who hid their bitterness behind well-tailored jackets. Women who wanted the world to applaud their discipline, yet used it like a lash on anyone who stepped out of line. Women who masked their own insecurities as righteous judgment. My chest tightened. She left a note, I said. Ethan stiffened. A note? For me? What did it say? They haven't released it yet. Silence filled the room, thick and uncertain. Alexander cleared his throat. You should rest, he said. Come downstairs when you're ready. He left first. Ethan lingered, eyes soft and uncertain. Mom, whatever she wrote, it doesn't change what she did. You know that, right? I reached up and cupped his cheek gently. I know, baby. He kissed my forehead and followed Alexander out. Alone again, I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling as the afternoon sun dipped lower. My thoughts drifted. Not to Patricia screaming, not to the soup scalding my skin, not to the night at the hospital. My mind drifted somewhere else entirely, somewhere deeper, to the quiet spaces inside me where I had kept the peace for too long. You deserve it. Those words echoed again. Her voice, sharp and venomous, flung like a weapon as boiling heat drenched my skin. I had replayed that moment so many times that the sound felt etched into my bones. But now something in me shifted. For the first time, the words didn't cut. They revealed. Not about me, about her. And somehow, strangely, that realization made space for something new inside me. Strength. After a long moment, I stood and made my way downstairs. The house felt calm, steady, safe, like a place built for grounding storms rather than creating them. Alexander was in the living room reviewing emails on his laptop. Ethan was pacing near the window, restless as always when his mind was working overtime. When he saw me, he lit up with that soft, boyish smile that reminded me of the little boy he used to be. Mom, he said gently, come sit. I sat between them on the couch, and for a long moment the three of us simply breathed in the same quiet air. So what now? Ethan asked. Now, I said slowly, we start healing. Alexander nodded once, approving. Good. But before everything else, I continued, I want to see my granddaughter. Ethan brightened. Alani? I think Alexander already texted her mother. They're on their way. I blinked. Really? Alexander glanced up from his laptop. Alani was worried about you. Brielle is bringing her. My heart warmed. I hadn't realized how much I needed that. The doorbell rang minutes later, and when Ethan opened the door, Alani ran inside with a bright, Grandma! She jumped into my arms, small and warm and full of love. I held her tight, burying my face in her soft hair. Breathing in the scent of childhood, lotion and crayons and innocence untouched by the world's sharpness. Are you okay? She whispered. I'm okay, baby. She hugged me tighter. That hug was the kind of healing no doctor could prescribe. Brielle stepped inside behind her, looking solemn. Marietta, she said softly, I'm so sorry for everything. I shook my head. You aren't responsible for your mother's choices. Still, she whispered, I hate that she hurt you. I know. She kissed my forehead gently and stepped back. For a moment, the room felt full of love, full of tension drained away, full of something strong enough to build a future on. But life, even healed life, has a way of shifting unexpectedly. Later that evening, after dinner and after Brielle and Alani left, after the sun dipped and the house grew quiet, there was a soft knock at the door. Ethan and I exchanged glances. Alexander stood immediately. Stay here, he said. He walked to the door, peeked through the security system feed, and frowned. It's Officer Ramirez, from earlier. My stomach tightened. Why would the police come in person? He opened the door. Officer Ramirez stepped inside, hat in hand, expression sympathetic. Mrs. Clark? Yes? I wanted to personally inform you Patricia has been transferred to a holding facility. I nodded. All right. His tone shifted slightly, but she made her one aloud phone calls. My breath froze. To who? To a lawyer, he said. Relief washed over me. Okay. But afterward, she told the officers something. My pulse thudded. Told them what? The officer hesitated. That she blames you for everything. That you destroyed her family. And he cleared his throat. She said she intends to fight this in court. The room chilled. Slowly, deliberately, Alexander stepped beside me. "She can fight," he said calmly. "She'll lose." The officer nodded respectfully. "I believe so too, but you needed to know." After he left, silence lingered in the air like smoke. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "She's unbelievable." I breathed out slowly. "Let her fight." They both looked at me. "Let her point her finger. Let her scream and blame and twist the truth. I don't care anymore. I know what happened. You know what happened, and the evidence is clear." Alexander's eyes warmed, like he was quietly impressed. "You're stronger than you were yesterday," he said. "No," I replied softly. "I'm just done being silent." That night, as I got ready for bed in the guest room, I caught my reflection again. The bandage, the swelling, the beginning of a scar that would remind me, not of pain, but of a moment where I finally drew a line, a moment where the silence broke. And then, unexpectedly, my phone buzzed with a new message, a number I recognized. "Brielle. Mom wants you to have this when the police allow it." A picture followed. It was the note Patricia had left. My hand trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. "Marietta, you ruined everything. You turned my daughter against me. You turned Ethan against me. You turned the world against me. You made me lose control. You pushed me to it. Remember that." Patricia. No apology, no remorse, no admission of what she had done, only blame. Only the same venom she'd always spewed, wrapped in ink instead of boiling soup. I stared at the note for a long time. Then I did something I didn't expect. I smiled. Not out of joy, not out of victory, out of clarity. Finally, everything was crystal clear. Patricia hadn't broken because of me. She had cracked under the weight of her own choices, her own bitterness, her own inability to see anyone but herself. I set the phone down, inhaled deeply, and let the last piece of guilt fall away. In its place rose a quiet, unwavering strength, the strength to begin again, to rebuild, to protect my peace fiercely, to live without shrinking. And as the house settled around me, safe, warm, steady, I whispered into the quiet, "This is the last time she'll ever hurt me." Outside the window, dawn began to rise, soft, gentle, a new beginning stretching its light across the sky. And somewhere deep inside me, a new beginning rose too, the kind that changes everything.